The Spiritual Handyman, bringing spiritual tools to the hands of the people who need them. Sponsored by the Eagle Heart Foundation. The Eagle Heart Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that brings charitable contributions and educational enhancements to the people. So how can you be a part of the Spiritual Handyman and the Eagle Heart Foundation? The Triple Win Situation. This book was written by Granddaughter Crow, and half of the proceeds go to the Eagle Heart Foundation, which in turn sponsors the Spiritual Handyman. How to get it one? It's on Amazon and Kindle for only $9.99. So we are here to bring tools to you. Thank you so much, Spiritual Handyman. We believe in what you do.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Spiritual Handyman Internet TV show. My name is Jason Antelek, and I am your host. And today we have an amazing author, speaker, teacher, and a lawyer with us. Her name is Sindy Warren, and she is going to share her yoga practices and a little bit about her book that has some great techniques in it. So that is coming up, some great tools for your everyday life. And remember that it's about bringing the methods that brings the tools to you, and the magic is already within you. So we're just here to provide you a way to tap into that. Take an opportunity to check us out at thespiritualhandyman.com. You can also catch us on YouTube, of course, on Facebook and Instagram. And any of those places, please feel free to join, like, share, comment, push all the buttons, have all the fun. So before we waste any more time with selfless promotion, let's get on over to Sindy. Sindy, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's so exciting to be here with you. So I am, as you mentioned, a yoga teacher and a lawyer just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. A few months ago, I published my first book, which is called Radi8, Using the Practice of Yoga to Cultivate Your Inner Shine. And it was really a work born of my passion about the power of the yoga practice to be a transformative agent in anyone's life. In my view, there's a richness there and an accessibility that so many modern yoga practitioners are unaware of. So the book really lays out the 8-limb philosophy, 8-part, if you will. And it's been an interesting journey for me. I was a very type A person most of my life. It served me well until it didn't. So I was raised with a go, go, go mentality, study hard, do well, get into good schools, that equals success. And I really sort of changed that narrative about 15 years ago. I was going through some things in my personal life, and I discovered yoga. First, really just as a form of exercise. And I pretty quickly discovered that it was actually a whole way of life. So much more than just what happens on the yoga mat or at the studio. And at the same time, I was shifting gears professionally, getting off sort of the law firm track and creating my own consulting firm that uses my degree in a little bit of a different way. And just over the years became a really passionate student of the practice for well over a decade before I thought of becoming a teacher. And now I've been a teacher for some time, and was still feeling like most modern yogis didn't know the deeper meaning of the practice. Again, going back to this idea of the underlying philosophy that goes back thousands of years, but is really accessible for how we live our lives in the modern age. So I try and implement the tools that I write about in my life. Some days are better than others. I'm far from perfect or spiritually evolved, but felt like I had some wisdom that I'd gleaned over my years of being a student and a teacher to share, and that's why I wrote the book.
Well, thanks for sharing that part of your journey. And I think a lot of us have gone from some sort of corporate or A-type personality situation and started looking for different answers and moved into a new place. And I know a lot of our listeners and viewers are experiencing something similar and finding their way. So it's great that you have kind of, you've taken this whole yoga practice and broken it down into a place where it's accessible, like you said, in our modern age. So help me understand and help our listeners and viewers grasp a little better. What was it right away that impacted and got you kind of going with the yoga before you started writing and expanding your knowledge base? But what were the benefits right away?
So there are many different types of physical yoga practice. The type that I was and still largely am drawn to is a pretty powerful physical practice. And I loved the physicality right away. What was new to me was the linking of breath work to movement. And I didn't this language back 15 years ago, but it really has an immediate impact on your nervous system. So I felt better. I just felt great. I felt great during the practice. But then I think what really struck me was I felt calmer and more focused and more present when I walked back in the door to my family. And I had an infant at the time and a new marriage. And it helped with what was just a challenging transition point in my life. And I started to think there's more going on here than just the workout. And as I said, yoga, there's so many different types of physical practice that it doesn't have to be a quote workout at all. It can be something extremely gentle and restorative. But what all forms of yoga really have in common is the effect they have on the nervous system. So I think that drew me in right away and made me curious to learn more.
That's great, and those are all things that in this technologically advanced world that we're all trying to find, a way to get that monkey mind to settle down and for our bodies to really respond, and at a neurological level to just quiet things, and those are huge qualities. I mean, I can see why you would be so drawn to a practice that brought that to you, especially in transition, because there's so many challenges that come up in transition, and we don't foresee those things. So having something to mitigate that situation, that's pretty powerful stuff. So for people in a similar state that maybe are just starting out and looking into this sort of activity, what would you say are the good things to start with? Give us some just basic tools, some basic things to think about.
Absolutely. So first, I recommend finding a yoga studio that feels like it fits what you're looking for physically and from a community perspective. So community to me is one of the biggest things my journey into yoga has given me. When I feel like I'm surrounded by like-minded people who are looking to grow and introspect, but also be in the world with that inward focus, I feel like things fall in line much more quickly and you have that support system. So that's one way to get started, is just to find the right studio. Another way is there are techniques for people that have no interest in the physical practice. There are really accessible techniques I talk about in the book that you can do sitting at home or in your office. So simple breath work. I think it would be helpful to first understand the larger context of like, what is yoga? So maybe we can help define that a little bit and then talk about some of the specifics. So yoga is a practice that began 5,000 years ago, best estimate, in India. And one thing that is so interesting to me is, the yogis came up with all these techniques, ethical guidelines, mindfulness practices, breath work, physical movement, sensory withdrawal, drawing inward, meditation. And modern society, as you mentioned, Jason, this technological age we're in is so challenging in terms of staying centered and grounded and mindful and all those things that we know and science tells us make us happier and healthier. that yoga, which is such an ancient practice, really provides accessible tools. So what's so fascinating to me is these yogis, thousands of years ago, discovered, created, codified these, these practices, and modern science is now showing us how powerful they are. Whether it's breath work or meditation or mindfulness, or even just gentle yoga movement. So what was first laid down in terms of a written codification, if you will, of the practices was something called the Yoga Sutras by a sage named Patanjali. And he laid out this 8-part path, which is typically known as the 8 limbs of yoga. So the physical practice of yoga is one of 8. And modern yogis, especially if you look at depictions in the media of yoga, really just focus on that one. And so many people are walking around thinking, I'm not flexible, I'm not fit, I'm not strong, yoga's not for me. And that's completely not the case. So there's physical yoga, many different types, but there are these 7 other limbs or paths or parts of the practice that anyone can engage in. And I try and really just break those out chapter by chapter in the book. So that's sort of the bigger context of what we're talking about here. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Okay. And it sounds like there's a lot of layers to what's possible. Would this be a case where if I was reading through your book, would it be easy for me to identify maybe what limbs are the ones that would work for me if maybe the physical is not my number one thing? Is that? Absolutely. Oh, okay. Can you tell me a little more about that, or tell us a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, the first limb is called, and the book does use some Sanskrit terms really just as a nod to tradition, but Sanskrit literacy is absolutely not required to practice this big thing we're calling yoga. So I'll use some of the Sanskrit terms and then I'll translate them. But if Sanskrit is not your jam, do not be scared off. So the first limb is called the yamas. These are ethical guidelines that pertain to how we relate to the world around us. So for example, the first one is called ahimsa, which means nonviolence or non-harming. And in the book, I give an explanation on what that means. It's a much deeper explanation than just simply saying, well, I don't go around killing people, so got that one. It's, what do you do at the level of even your words and your thoughts, including your thoughts to and about yourself. So I suggest a couple of really easy practices, journaling, things that are even easier than that, just taking a momentary check-in with yourself about inner dialogue and that sort of thing. That would be a way to practice yoga. And there are 5 of the yamas. And then the next limb is called the niyamas. And these are an additional 5 ethical guidelines, but they pertain to the way we relate to ourselves. So one that I love talking about and thinking about is called svadhyaya, which means self-study. So many of us go through the world on autopilot or caught up in the more is more mentality. And this guideline just asks us to simply slow down, perhaps close our eyes, take a couple deep breaths, and notice the inner dialogue, because everybody has one. And the first step to changing anything is first becoming aware of it. So without going too into my story, I'll just share an example. When I was in my mid-20s, I developed a binge eating disorder. And it was, a few years after that, I discovered yoga. And it really helped me slow down and see the way I was relating to myself, which was so unkind. Like I would call myself names and I would swear at myself and I would hold myself up to this impossible standard, which I couldn't meet, which would begin the cycle anew. And probably, most of your listeners can relate to that kind of negative inner dialogue. But until I really sat down to observe it, I kind of knew, but it wasn't anything I had real awareness of. So this practice, for example, ahimsa, non-harming, svadhyaya, self-study, helped me really go inside myself and see what was happening, how unhealthy it was for me, how antithetical to my growth it was. And then I was able to, in a very gentle, kind way, make changes that really led to my healing.
Wow, that's really powerful stuff there that you're sharing with us. Thank you. I love that there isn't just different pathways. There's actually different, well, I'll say categories for the moment, but there's other little paths within the pathways. So you can really find what works for you. You can really match up to something that fits into your life and fits into where you are. And then it leads you right to the next path of expansion. Is that accurate?
100%, in my opinion. Now, some yogis may disagree on this. My very strong opinion is this is, a big tent affair, and you can really choose your own adventure on your yoga path. So if the physical practice isn't for you, maybe you look into the yamas, or into another limb is called pranayama. That's breath work. There are so many different things you can pick and choose. They all may end up coalescing for you, as they have for me, or they may not. So absolutely, there are so many different branches. If you imagine a tree trunk just branching out, so many different branches of yoga. And I think it's a pick what works for you and forget about the rest, and don't feel guilty about it. There's so many ways to practice yoga. And it's really, I think that the entire philosophical underpinning of yoga is to develop individuals' discernment to figure out what serves you. So yeah, take what works, leave behind what doesn't.
That's such a great way to approach those things. Thank you for sharing that and pointing it out. There's so much in your book in such a condensed way. It's like every page has 2 or 3 things on it that are so helpful. So help me understand, for somebody maybe that's at work and having a rough day, what can they do? Because you mentioned like sitting in their chair and taking a moment, maybe something that they can do just sitting at their desk, or something like that. Can you help the viewers and listeners with that?
Absolutely. So if you're in that situation, find a quiet seat. If you can, close your eyes. For some people, that feels uncomfortable. So just narrow your focus, soften your gaze, lengthen your spine, and take 3 deep rounds of breath. So first you inhale from the base of the spine all the way up to the top of the spine, and then you let the air go. And then you inhale and you really feel the air flowing up the body. And then you exhale all the air out. And then one more, a deep breath in, filling all the way up to the top of the lungs, maybe a little pause. And then you let all the air descend out.
Okay, that really works.
Yeah.
That really works.
Then you check in. Whoa, nervous system is like, thank you. And it's like a little reset button for your day. And what did it take us? 10 seconds?
Yeah, that's the part that was so great. And you can do that anywhere. You could sit in a meeting and do that if you needed to get that, that's like centering and grounding and oxygenating and stretching you out all at the same time. So is that the sneaky part of yoga, is that each little thing that you do has multiple effects? It's almost like herbalism in a way, where you have one, ginger root does a bazillion things. So just simply stretching your spine does a number of things. Is that how it is on all the limbs of yoga?
It really is. And all these little practices that take, anywhere from 5 seconds to an hour, have a cumulative effect over time. So even very small things, if you do that exercise daily for a week, you may just start to notice an internal shift where you're a little more grounded, a little more in touch with what's happening inside your body, which is developing, it's all an exercise in developing awareness. I really am a firm believer that little consistent practices have a huge impact over time. It doesn't have to be, oh, I have to go to a studio and take a 90-minute class 5 times a week. I mean, many of us, including myself, just simply don't have time for that. So sneaking in little parts of the practice, whether it's, you know, starting the day with a little bit of introspection or even ending the day with a little gratitude practice, less can really be more here.
That's a really great point about the little things over time. I'm a huge supporter of that, and the way I relate it to a lot of people is that new actions are new outcomes. So just taking that very simple new action, like you said, you know, several days a week, or try it 7 days for a week, even when you're at home, can have lasting effects and really start to make small shifts, which add up, you know, over time. Intuitively.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
No,
love
please
the
go ahead.
analogy of just like a little drop of water, a single drop of water over, you know, a period of years, carving a pathway in a mountain. And I think it just makes the point. I love that analogy because, like you said, it's the little things.
Absolutely. That's 100% true. I love that analogy. That's definitely a keeper. So intuitively, I have something came up for me, and I just want to ask for everybody, really. And I'm not sure why, but here we go. What would be a suggestion for people that maybe are having trouble sleeping or having trouble getting to sleep and staying that way, getting rested? Can you help us with a couple of nighttime techniques that might really ease us into a better state of rest?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I'm glad your intuition brought you there. So first of all, one thing to know about breath work is when the exhale is longer than the inhale, it kicks the body into what we call the parasympathetic nervous system, which is colloquially known as rest and digest. So if you were to inhale for a count of 4 and then maybe pause, there's also a lot of science behind breath retention. So we can just go through this a couple rounds. Go ahead, empty all the breath out, lengthen your spine. Eyes can close or be soft. Inhale to a count of 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And just 3 rounds of that. There's another number measurement that can work well, which is inhale 4, hold 7, exhale 8. 4, 7, 8 breath. And I do mention that one in the book. So it's really a matter of a little bit of breath retention, exhale longer than the inhale, and it has an almost immediate effect on the nervous system. So that's one thing. Another, this is a posture anyone can do, has the same effect on the nervous system. Scoot your butt up against the wall or a baseboard or whatever, legs up the wall pose. It is exactly as it sounds. Your legs are up the wall. And it has this effect of letting the lymph system drain, letting the legs relax, and calming the nervous system, all things that really help us get out of the monkey mind and the stress response that many of us have throughout our days. So those are 2 really simple practices that would take, you know, a minute or 2.
Those are great tools, and I love how incrementally you've already expanded on what we experienced when we talked about sitting in a chair. Mm-hmm. And now just very simply, we have held the breath a little bit longer. Right. That's added. And then exhaling longer than you inhale, which honestly was brand new to me, but it makes immediate sense. I used it today already. I'm going to use it the rest of my day and tomorrow too. So Thank you for that gift. That's amazing. folks, you got to understand that her book is full of so many of these little things that you have to own it. You have to take some time to get into it. And we could talk for hours on the tools that you have available. What I'd love to do is understand where people can get the book, where they can learn more about you, where they can, reach out. I don't know if you have classes in your local area that you teach, or if you are, tell us more about your practice and how we learn more about it.
Great. So as I said, I'm in the Cleveland, Ohio area. I work for Citizen Yoga, which is a new studio to Cleveland. If you're in the area, check out Citizen Yoga Cleveland for sure. My book is on Amazon. It's spelled funny, which I'll explain. It's RADI and the number 8, but it's pronounced Radi8. And the number 8 is in there as a nod to the 8-limb path of yoga that the book really follows. So it's on Amazon, and I also have a website. There's a link to the book there and ways to reach out to me. My website is www.yoga, again, the number 8 book, yoga8book.com. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram and love connecting with people who want to know more about yoga. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. As you can probably see, I spell my name a little funny. It's Sindy and then Warren, Warren. And yeah, I'm here always thinking and talking about yoga. So I'd love to hear from you.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for providing such amazing tools for our listeners and viewers and myself today. So definitely benefited from our time together. I'm sure that everybody else did too. Remind everybody that all of the information and links will be down in the comments and description. Please feel free to click all the buttons and like, connect, subscribe, anything you find down there, just do it. Share it with all your people. I want to thank you, Sindy Warren, for being here and sharing your techniques and your amazing book with us. I would love to have you on again so that we could talk about some more tools. There's so much to build on just from what you've given us today. So again, on behalf of all our listeners and viewers, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Jason. I would absolutely love that. It's been a lot of fun.
Right on. So everybody remember, the method is what brings you the tools, but the magic is already in you. And thank you for watching the Spiritual Handyman Show. And we will see you in the next episode.